Welcome to Sleepy Case Files, a place where quiet storytelling meets mysterious cases. Tonight, we slowly explore a story from the world of true crime. When exploring the dark, dusty corners of true crime history, it is easy to get lost in the fog-choked, gas-lit cobblestones of Jack the Ripper's London, or attempt to decode the chilling, claustrophobic family dynamics of the Lizzie Borden household in the late 1800s. There is a certain psychological safety in those vintage mysteries. The centuries separating us from the grim events act as a comfortable emotional buffer. But sometimes we must strip away that historical safety net. Stepping out of the 1800s and diving into a much more recent mystery brings us to something that feels uncomfortably modern, uncomfortably close to home, and deeply, deeply unsettling. Have you ever had one of those days where the pressure simply builds and builds and you feel this sudden, overwhelming urge to just hit pause, to pack a single bag, get in your car, turn your phone off, and drive without telling anyone where you're going? I think most of us have felt that at least once in our lives. It is a very human response to stress. We think, if I can just get away for a few days, clear my head, and breathe some different air, I can come back and fix everything. You just need a time out. But what happens when that temporary escape becomes permanent? What happens when you drive out into the dark, looking for a moment of peace, and you simply never come back? Today we are talking about a case that has absolutely captivated the true crime community, law enforcement, and armchair detectives for nearly 2 decades. It is a story about a brilliant, athletic young woman who seemed to have everything going for her, but who was quietly carrying a mountain of invisible stress. This is the disappearance of Maura Murray. To understand the complex mystery of exactly what happened on a dark, winding rural road in New Hampshire, we first have to understand who Maura Murray was, and more importantly, where her headspace might have been in the days and weeks leading up to her disappearance. In February of the year 2004, Maura Murray was a 21-year-old nursing student enrolled at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. By all outward appearances to the casual observer, Maura was a phenomenal overachiever. She was a star athlete throughout her high school career, a fiercely competitive long-distance runner who possessed the kind of discipline that initially gained her acceptance into the highly prestigious United States Military Academy at West Point. She spent 3 rigorous semesters there, demonstrating her intelligence and physical capabilities, before ultimately deciding to transfer to the nursing program at UMass Amherst. She was smart, driven, conventionally attractive, and well-liked by a wide circle of peers and teammates. But beneath that highly polished, successful, high-achieving exterior, significant cracks were beginning to form. The relentless pressure to be absolutely perfect, to constantly succeed and meet the high expectations of her family and herself, was steadily taking its toll. While still a cadet at West Point, she had been formally cited for an honor code of conduct violation involving stolen makeup from the campus commissary. Later, after her transfer to UMass, she illegally used a stolen credit card number to order food deliveries from local restaurants, which quickly led to a minor but highly embarrassing brush with local law enforcement. The criminal charges were ultimately going to be dismissed entirely if she managed to stay out of trouble for a few probationary months. But it was undeniably a serious mistake. It was precisely the kind of uncharacteristic mistake that strongly suggested she was silently acting out, making reckless, impulsive decisions that did not align with the perfect, dutiful image she constantly projected to her family, her long-distance boyfriend in the military, and her closest friends. The real, undeniable unraveling of her carefully constructed life seemed to happen in the frantic 4 days immediately before she vanished into the winter night. This is precisely where the timeline of events becomes incredibly important to investigators, because it paints a vivid, heartbreaking picture of a young woman who is rapidly reaching her absolute breaking point. On Thursday, February 5th, Maura was working a late-night, quiet shift at a security desk situated in a student dormitory on the UMass campus. Sometime around 1 o'clock in the morning, her immediate supervisor found her sitting at the desk in a state of complete, unblinking catatonia. She was staring blankly at the wall, crying uncontrollably and silently, and was completely, terrifyingly unresponsive to any direct questions. When her worried supervisor finally managed to get her to speak after several minutes of trying, Maura only muttered 2 cryptic words: "My sister." It turned out she had been on a long phone call with her older sister Kathleen, who had recently been discharged from a rehabilitation clinic and was struggling with her sobriety. Investigators wonder if that distressing phone call was the actual reason for Maura's breakdown, or if it was simply the final straw in a heavy emotional load she had been silently carrying for months. Her supervisor immediately escorted her back to her own dorm room, correctly deeming her entirely unfit to finish her security shift. Over the weekend, Maura's father, Fred Murray, came to town for a pre-planned visit. They spent Saturday going car shopping together because Maura's personal vehicle, an older black 1996 Saturn sedan, was in absolutely terrible mechanical shape. It was sputtering, running on only 3 cylinders, constantly burning through motor oil, and Fred had explicitly and repeatedly told her absolutely not to drive it long distances under any circumstances. That Saturday night, Maura borrowed her father's vehicle and went to an on-campus dorm party with some friends. She left the party early Sunday morning, driving her father's brand new Toyota Corolla, and unfortunately crashed it directly into a metal guardrail at a T intersection. The car was heavily, noticeably damaged, resulting in thousands of dollars in required repairs. While Maura was thankfully not cited by the responding local police officers for driving under the influence or reckless driving, she was deeply, profoundly distraught by the incident. She had severely wrecked her dad's brand new car. She tearfully promised her father she would get the official police accident report on Monday morning and carefully figure out all the insurance details to fix the situation. Fred rented a car, drove back home to Connecticut, and repeatedly told Maura they would sort it out together, and urged her not to worry too much about the metal and glass. That Sunday afternoon was the last time Fred Murray ever saw his daughter. Monday, February 9th, 2004, is the fateful day everything goes entirely dark, and the calculated choices Maura makes continue to baffle seasoned investigators. Maura deliberately did not go to her nursing classes. Instead, she sat at her computer and emailed her professors and her supervisor at the nursing program clinic, telling them she would be out of town for a week due to a sudden, tragic death in the family. There was no death in the family. She was deliberately lying to buy herself a window of unquestioned time. She used her computer to research driving directions to the Berkshires in western Massachusetts and to Burlington, Vermont. She made a phone call to a condo association located in Bartlett, New Hampshire, a scenic place her family used to frequently vacation when she was a young child, but she ultimately did not book a room there. She also called an automated telephone system for booking hotels in the popular ski town of Stowe, Vermont. She basically spent the entire Monday morning making secret, frantic arrangements for a mysterious trip no one in her life knew she was taking. In the middle of the afternoon, she systematically packed her black Saturn. She packed several days' worth of clothes, basic toiletries, her heavy nursing textbooks, and her prescribed birth control pills. She also printed out the specific driving directions to Stowe, Vermont. She drove to a local ATM and completely, unequivocally, emptied her personal bank account, withdrawing exactly $280, leaving almost nothing behind. From there, she drove directly to a local Amherst liquor store and spent approximately $40 on a bottle of Bailey's Irish Cream, Kahlua, vodka, and a large, heavy box of Franzia red wine. And then she got behind the wheel of her highly unreliable, broken-down Saturn, the exact car her father had vehemently told her not to drive, and headed completely north, entirely alone, straight into the freezing, unforgiving New England winter afternoon. By nightfall, Maura was driving deep into the White Mountains of New Hampshire. She was navigating east on Route 112, a notoriously dark, winding, two-lane rural road, entirely surrounded by dense, towering pine woods. It was a bitterly cold, completely black winter night, and the narrow roads were heavily flanked by high frozen snowbanks, plowed from recent, severe winter storms. At approximately 7:27 in the evening, Maura failed to negotiate a sharp left-hand curve in the road. The black Saturn violently slid across the opposing lane of traffic and crashed heavily into a frozen snowbank, hitting a small stand of trees. The violent impact was hard enough to immediately deploy the driver's side airbags, severely crack the front windshield, and push the radiator back into the cooling fan. The loud accident happened right near a quaint farmhouse owned by a local family named the Westmans. Faith Westman heard the loud thud of the crash, looked out her front living room window, and saw the dark car facing the wrong direction. She immediately picked up her telephone and called the Grafton County Sheriff's Department dispatch to report the accident. Just a minute or two later, a local school bus driver named Butch Atwood came driving down the same road. He pulled his large yellow bus up next to the crashed Saturn. He saw a young woman sitting behind the steering wheel. She did not appear to be severely injured, but she was shivering and clearly shaken up. Butch asked her if she was okay, and if she urgently wanted him to call the police for official help. Maura desperately pleaded with him not to call the police. She smoothly claimed she had already called AAA roadside assistance. Butch intuitively knew she was lying to him, likely because she desperately did not want law enforcement involved in the situation. He reluctantly left her by her car, drove a mere 100 yards down the dark road to his own house, went inside his home, and called 911 anyway to report the crash to the authorities. This sequence of events brings us to the most agonizing window of time in this case. Butch Atwood left Maura at her car around 7:37 p.m. The first responding officer, Sergeant Cecil Smith, arrived at exactly 7:46 p.m. When he pulled up to the crash scene, the Saturn's headlights were off, the doors were locked, and Maura Murray was entirely, inexplicably gone. In under 10 minutes, on a desolate, freezing road, a young woman vanished into thin air. Today the case remains an open investigation, haunted by the absolute lack of footprints, the scent dog losing her trail in the middle of the street, and a broken family desperately waiting for answers. It is a chilling reminder of how, in 7 brief minutes, on a quiet winter night, a life can be altered forever, leaving behind a mystery that refuses to be solved.